Hi, my name's Xtine, I'm a food writer. And do you ever just come across a recipe and think, yeah, I need to eat that as soon as possible, like right now, like let's get started immediately. That was me today with this New York Times recipe for gochujang caramel cookies. Gochujang is a Korean hot pepper paste that I've been kind of obsessed with lately. It's a little bit hot and spicy, it's got a little bit of earthiness to it, and it's got just a hint of sweetness. Tons of depth of flavor, super good, adds a lot to any recipe. Me baking these gochujang caramel cookies today is totally self-indulgent. I don't even know if this recipe is going to do that well. None of my gochujang recipes have done that well on my channel thus far, but it's not about that. It's about what's delicious. And ultimately it's about what I want to eat, which is these cookies. But I encourage you to get on board with gochujang in general. I'm not gonna stop bringing it up. I'm really excited. I love a sweet treat that's got a little bit of savoriness to it. I'm into it. This is what gets me going. All right, let's not waste any more time. I've let this stick of unsalted butter get up to room temperature, and I'm going to measure out 1 tablespoon and plop it in the bowl. Next, I'm adding 2 tablespoons of dark brown sugar and 1 heaping tablespoon of gochujang. It's a pretty thick paste. Here's me trying and failing to shake it out, so I'm going to use a spatula instead, like a civilized person. Now it's time to combine these into a paste. This is why you really need your butter to be nice and soft. It will make your life a lot easier at this stage. You should end up with this really beautiful rust red creamy paste. Set it aside for now. Now, grab a big old bowl and dump the rest of the softened stick of unsalted butter in there. Then add 1 cup of sugar and 1 egg at room temperature. I tried to crack the egg with 1 hand, and then I remembered who I am and that I don't know how to do that. Next, 1/2 teaspoon of coarse kosher salt, 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. Grab a fork or a whisk, I like to use a fork, and mix to combine until it becomes one creamy, cohesive mixture. Make sure to work out all the little butter clumps that may form to the best of your abilities. I just want to point out that the recipe says to whisk together by hand until smooth, which love whisking together by hand. Great cardio. I'm all for it. What I don't appreciate is that it says whisk together by hand until smooth about 1 minute. And that just feels like I'm being set up to fail. I don't want to be made to feel inadequate when it inevitably takes longer than 1 minute. You told me it needs to be smooth. Now it's just going to take the amount of time it takes. I'll get there. Now the recipe says to switch to a flexible spatula and add 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Stir that in. And then add 1 1/2 cups of all-purpose flour. The recipe says to gently stir to combine, so I tried my best to have a soft touch, and I basically folded the flour in by continually folding the dough over on itself until a nice ball of dough formed. Gorgeous. I'm going to let this dough set up in the refrigerator for 5 to 10 minutes. The recipe says to do it for 10 to 15, but I read in the comments on the recipe that if the dough gets too cold, it's difficult to work with, and for what we need to do next, we need it to still be pretty soft and pliable. So I'm gonna go a little lighter with the fridge time. In the meantime, let's preheat the oven to 350 degrees. While the dough is in the fridge, I'm also going to line 2 baking sheets with parchment paper. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes, and it's time to incorporate the gochujang mixture we made into the dough. Things got a little dicey here. The recipe says to add the mixture to the dough in 3 to 4 spaced out blobs. So that's what I did. And then moving in circular strokes, you're supposed to swirl it in, which I tried to do with limited success. The goal is to have nice bright orangey red streaks throughout, which kind of happened, but honestly I think I might have been better off just adding the paste all at once and swirling it in that way. Now the recipe says to use an ice cream scoop to measure out balls of dough that are 1/4 cup each in size. It says to place them at least 3 inches apart on the cookie sheet, and honestly these scoops do look really delicious. I'm feeling a little better about the swirls now. In the oven they go. The recipe also says that because we're spacing the cookies out so much, you might only get 4 to 5 cookies on each pan, so my second tray ended up with just 3 cookies. The cookies are in the oven and they're gonna bake for 11-ish minutes. Now we wait. Whoa. Oh no. To be fair, the recipe did say 1/4 cup rounds, which makes for a huge cookie. I'm gonna give them another minute. And here's how the first tray looks after baking for 13 minutes total. Well, okay. Okay, here's the difference. They do set up pretty quickly. This is just out of the oven. And these have been out of the oven for maybe 5 minutes. Okay, I went through and gently performed some surgery to separate them from each other. For the record, I would like to reiterate that the recipe says use an ice cream scoop to plop out 1/4 cup rounds, spaced at least 3 inches apart on sheet pans. And it even says you should get 4 to 5 cookies per pan. I don't know why the cookies had to be giant. Like, look at this cookie next to the size of my head. It's not quite as big as my head, but it's close. And that feels gratuitous. I feel like they're gonna be tasty. They're nice and soft and gooey. Like, that's a nice texture. Ooh. Wait a minute. Whoa, the heat comes in at the end. You're just eating a delicious caramely cookie, and then all of a sudden there's like a little bit of spice. It's kind of wild. They're delicious. Very, very good. I don't know why they had to be huge. Dear Eric Kim of the New York Times, who made this recipe, first of all, thank you. Second of all, why did they have to be huge? Why did they have to be huge? Ooh. Yeah, that's, oh. That's a gooey cookie. I don't know that I've ever had a spicy cookie before. It's crazy.